The storm rolled across the prairie the night Elena arrived at the broken fence line where she first saw him. She had left behind everything, her city life, her memories, and the fear that had clung to her for years. Her heart was trembling, not because of the wind, but because she didn't know if she could trust herself to start again. When she saw the cowboy atop his horse, lantern shining against the dark, something inside her whispered that this night would change everything in ways she couldn't foresee. She hadn't meant for this to be the place where she spent her first night away from the life she escaped. Yet fate brought her here, stranded, scared, and unsure. The cowboy dismounted, dusted his hat, and offered a gentle smile that felt warmer than the barn lights behind him. His voice carried patience instead of pressure, kindness instead of questions, as if he sensed the storm inside her chest. She followed him because something about him felt like a safe place she hadn't known she needed. Inside the barn, the glow of lanterns softened the edges of her fear. He offered a blanket and space near the hay bales where the wind couldn't reach. She expected judgment for arriving at his ranch unannounced, but he simply brought her warm tea and stepped back, letting her breathe. She realized no one had ever given her room to exist without demanding something in return. The night felt heavy, but for the first time, not in a painful way. It was the weight of finally stopping long enough to feel safe. He introduced himself as Cole, a quiet rancher who preferred fixing fences over making conversation. Yet he talked to her gently, sensing she needed distraction from the memories that followed her. She found herself telling him more than she intended, why she left, what she lost, and how she feared she would never belong anywhere again. His eyes softened, not with pity but with understanding, as if he knew what it meant to start from pieces. She felt something shift, fragile but real. The storm outside softened to a gentle rain, but inside her chest, something new stirred, an unfamiliar warmth. Cole noticed her shiver and draped his coat around her shoulders, not touching her, not stepping closer, just offering comfort without claim. No man had ever treated her like that. She wondered if this kindness was what she'd been running toward without realizing. She feared her heart, fragile as glass, but tonight it felt protected in a way she hadn't expected. When she admitted she had nowhere else to go, Cole didn't hesitate. He told her she could stay in the guest cabin until she figured out her next step. She felt tears sting her eyes, not from fear this time, but relief. She had braced herself for rejection, but instead she found a place that didn't demand explanations. For the first time in so long, she wasn't alone. The quiet night didn't feel empty, it felt like a beginning she didn't dare hope for. Elena woke at sunrise to the smell of coffee drifting from the porch. Cole stood by the railing, watching the horizon with the same quiet focus he'd shown last night. She hesitated before stepping out, unsure if last night had been a mistake or a blessing. He handed her a mug without a word, letting the soft morning unfold naturally. She realized how rare it was to be with someone who didn't force conversation, who let silence feel comfortable instead of demanding. He showed her around the ranch, letting her meet the horses and even teaching her how to stroke their necks without startling them. She felt something hopeful rise within her, an unexpected sense of belonging. Life in the city had been crowded but lonely, yet here, surrounded by open land and honest silence, she felt like she could breathe again. The way Cole treated the animals, with patience and tenderness, mirrored the way he treated her, and it eased the knots inside her heart. Days passed softly, like pages turning in a gentle book. Elena found herself laughing again, sometimes so naturally she startled herself. She cooked dinner one evening, and Cole stood by the counter, watching her with a warmth that made her heart flutter. It wasn't the kind of attention she feared, there was no hunger, no expectation. Just admiration, respect, a quiet tenderness that touched her more deeply than anything she had known before. One evening, she noticed Cole avoiding her gaze, his expression weighed down by something unsaid. She asked what was wrong, and he hesitated before admitting he feared getting close to someone who might leave. His honesty startled her, the cowboy who seemed unshakable carried scars of his own. In that moment, she realized they were two broken souls learning how to trust life again. The vulnerability between them softened the air, binding them gently. But just when Elena thought she had found peace, a letter arrived, a reminder of the past she had fled. The man she had escaped was searching for her. Fear washed over her like a cold wave. Every breath she had rebuilt felt fragile again. She considered leaving the ranch, thinking it was the only way to keep Cole safe from the trouble she carried. But the thought of disappearing from his life hurt more than she expected. She had finally found something worth staying for. Cole found her packing that night. His voice trembled with concern as he begged her not to run from the life she'd begun to build. Elena explained everything, the fear, the danger, the shadows she thought would never stop chasing her. Instead of stepping back, he stepped forward, not in possession but in protection. He told her he wasn't afraid of her past, only of losing her to it. His loyalty shook her, planting courage where fear once lived. The next days were filled with unspoken tension. Cole kept close, not to control her but to reassure her she wasn't facing anything alone. Elena felt torn between fear and hope, past and future. She found herself leaning on Cole's quiet strength, realizing that trust wasn't given, it was grown, slowly and gently. Every moment they shared built a foundation she didn't know she had the courage to stand on. She was changing, becoming braver. One afternoon, a ranch hand arrived breathless, claiming a stranger had been seen near the outer fence line. Elena's face went pale. Cole didn't hesitate, he saddled his horse and assured her he would handle it. She begged him not to confront anyone dangerous, but he promised he wouldn't act recklessly. She watched him ride away, fear curling in her stomach at the thought of losing the only person who had ever cared for her without demanding anything in return. Hours passed before Cole returned, mud on his boots and tension in his shoulders. He explained the stranger was merely a traveler seeking directions, not the threat Elena feared. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she nearly collapsed. Cole touched her shoulder gently, grounding her with quiet reassurance. She realized how deeply she cared for him, so deeply it scared her. This ranch wasn't just shelter anymore, it had become the place her heart anchored itself. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She stepped outside and found Cole sitting by the corral, watching the stars like they held answers he couldn't speak aloud. She sat beside him, letting the silence stretch warm between them. When she finally admitted she had feelings for him, her voice trembled. Cole turned toward her slowly, his eyes softening with a tenderness that felt like home. He told her he cared too, more than he ever expected to care for anyone again. But fear still lingered inside her, whispering that love was dangerous. Cole sensed her hesitation and took her hand gently, holding it as if it were something precious. He told her love wasn't about controlling or rushing, it was about healing together, learning each other's scars, and choosing each other every day. His quiet words broke something open inside her. She realized she had always misunderstood love. It wasn't something to fear, it was something that could save her. The days that followed were filled with subtle joy. Cooking together, fixing small things around the cabin, brushing the horses at sunset, it all felt like living inside a story she once believed she didn't deserve. She found herself smiling for no reason, humming while she worked, and catching Cole looking at her with a softness that warmed her from the inside. She felt love blooming slowly, like wildflowers after rain. But just as their bond deepened, Elena received another letter, one that confirmed her past wasn't done chasing her. She froze, tears filling her eyes as she stared at the familiar handwriting. Cole found her trembling and gently took the letter from her hands. After reading it, his jaw tightened, not in anger at her, but at the pain she had carried alone. He promised he would help her face whatever was coming, not as a protector but as a partner. They rode together to the sheriff's office the next morning, Elena's fear wrapped tightly around her chest. Cole stayed by her side as she explained everything, the threats, the fear, the escape. The sheriff listened carefully and assured her she would be protected. For the first time, she felt the weight of her past lifting, not because it disappeared, but because she no longer carried it alone. Cole's hand holding hers gave her strength she never had before. After the sheriff filed the case, they walked back to the horses, Elena feeling strangely lighter. Cole told her he was proud of her courage, and she felt tears burn again, this time not from fear but from the overwhelming relief of finally being seen. She leaned her head against his chest, hearing his steady heartbeat, and realized she had never felt so safe. She wasn't running anymore, she was choosing to stand. Back at the ranch, everything felt clearer. The open fields, the gentle breeze, the sound of horses grazing, it all seemed to tell her she belonged here. Cole worked beside her that afternoon, and their easy laughter filled the air. She watched him move with quiet confidence, and she felt a soft warmth bloom inside her chest. Love didn't feel like a storm anymore. It felt like sunlight breaking through clouds after years of rain. As dusk settled, Cole asked her to walk with him to the old tree behind the barn, a place he rarely shared with anyone. The branches stretched wide like welcoming arms, and beneath its shade, he finally told her why he feared love. He had lost someone he cared for deeply, and the pain had convinced him he was better off alone. Hearing his story made Alina's heart ache, but also made her feel closer to him. They were mirrors, two people healing from different wounds but walking the same path. She reached out and took his hand, telling him that healing wasn't meant to be done alone. He smiled softly, a rare smile that lit his whole face, and she felt a flutter in her heart she couldn't put into words. They stood beneath the tree, the sky turning gold above them, and it felt like the world paused just long enough for them to breathe in the beauty of something new and fragile and real. The more time they spent together, the more Elena realized she wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. The ranch became a place woven with their shared moments, each one stitching her broken edges into something whole. Cole taught her how to saddle a horse properly, and though she fumbled at first, he guided her hands gently. Their laughter echoed across the field, sounding like music she wished she could replay forever. One evening, Cole invited her to ride with him to the hill overlooking the valley. The sky was painted in shades of amber and rose, and she felt peace wash over her as she watched the horizon. Cole turned to her and said he had something to ask, but before he could continue, she placed her hand on his cheek and told him she wasn't afraid anymore, not of her past, not of trusting, and not of loving. His eyes softened, and he whispered that she had changed his world. He finally confessed that he wanted her in his life, not because he felt responsible for her, but because he had fallen for her in ways he never expected. Elena felt her heart swell with emotion. She had feared love her whole life, but with Cole, it felt gentle, steady, and good. She told him she loved him too, and the words felt like freedom. The cowboy who found her in a storm had become the man she trusted with her heart. Their bond deepened naturally, without rush or pressure. Every sunrise felt like a new promise. Elena realized she had given her first night of fear to a world she left behind, but she had given her first night of trust, courage, and hope to a cowboy who never asked for anything except honesty. Cole showed her that love wasn't something to fear, it was something to grow carefully, cherish deeply, and protect fiercely. When the sheriff finally informed her that the man from her past had been tracked down and stopped, Elena felt the last chain around her heart snap. She returned to the ranch with tears of relief streaming down her face. Cole met her halfway across the yard, wiping her tears gently with his thumb. She didn't need words to explain the freedom she finally felt. He understood. His arms wrapped around her in a way that felt like coming home. The ranch hands gathered that evening with a small celebration, and Elena felt overwhelmed by the sense of family surrounding her. Cole stayed by her side the entire time, pride glowing in his eyes. She realized the life she once feared she'd never have was now blooming around her, warm, steady, and full of love. She wasn't a visitor anymore. She was part of something real. Later that night, under a sky full of stars, Cole took her hand and led her toward the hill behind the corral. The night was quiet, but full of unspoken meaning. He told her that if she chose to stay, he wanted to build a future with her, one built not on fear but on the hope they had nurtured together. Elena felt tears spill again, not from sadness, but from joy so deep it felt like light filling her soul. She told him she wasn't going anywhere. This ranch, this life, this man, this was home. The cowboy who found her in a storm had become the love she never expected, the love she once thought she didn't deserve. She leaned into him, her heart finally whole, knowing this was the beginning of everything she had ever wanted. Together, beneath the stars, they stepped into a future built on trust, courage, and a love stronger than fear. And so the night she feared became the night that saved her. The cowboy who offered her shelter offered her something far greater, hope, healing, and a love gentle enough to mend every wound. She gave her first night of trust to a cowboy, and in return, she learned that real love wasn't something to fear, it was something to treasure for a lifetime.